It is the biggest and perhaps the most important mandate a political party has had in the recent era, and it is very simple what that mandate is. It is to stop Barack Obama. It is to stop the Democrat Party. There is no other reason why Republicans were elected yesterday. Republicans were not elected to govern.
There is going to be a firestorm on Capitol Hill. You're going to see calls for impeachment. I don't mean that necessarily they'll do it, but there'll be calls for it.
Some of the other things that people are suggesting, such as possible impeachment of the president for what many would consider lawless actions if he goes too far. Some have suggested if he goes too far, he should be impeached. How big would the action have to be? What would he have to do to make it an impeachable offense, that would so offend the Republicans, they would take the political perilous step of impeaching him? Is President Obama trying to bait the Republicans into impeaching him?
Normally, if a president does something that would bring the country to a tipping point, the first thing people would say is impeachment.
So it's still kumbaya, let's work together in the conservative media land and among Republicans. The unifying post-election theme that the Republicans have proposed to the country in the wake of the elections is, as you see here on the screen behind the chairman, Stop Obama. That's really their big idea. Everything President Obama does is positively outrageous to the Republicans and to the conservative media. And that was before President Obama went to China and negotiated a one-on-one U.S. and China agreement on pollution and climate change. Republicans' reason for living was that President Obama must be stopped. Even before this, how much does the president's new surprise climate agreement up that ante for them? In 2012, Robert Draper published a book called Do Not Ask What Good We Do Inside the U.S. House of Representatives. The opening vignette from that book was Inauguration Day, January 2009, when President Obama was being sworn in to start his first term. In Robert Draper's telling, a group of senior Republicans met that day, on Inauguration Day, to plot a strategy of opposing the new president on all policy. On every bill. They would oppose him as a matter of strategy. Even when they actually agreed with him, they would say no to anything coming from him. That revelation in the Robert Draper book suddenly made a lot of things make sense from President Obama's first term that otherwise had seemed pretty weird at the time.
This law failed by 7 votes when 7 Republicans who had co-sponsored the bill had co-sponsored the idea, suddenly walked away from their own proposal after I endorsed it. So they make a proposal, they sign on to the bill, I say, great, good idea. I turn around, they're gone. What happened?
Yes, they did agree with you on stuff, but they couldn't possibly do anything with you. They decided that would be a fate worse than death. And this has been a fruitful strategy for the Republican Party. They won the House in 2010. They won the Senate in 2014. And really, nothing gets done at all. Nothing gets done in Congress. After Republicans took the House in 2010, that Congress is officially on the record books as the least productive Congress in the history of Congress. But they're about to lose that title to the Congress that came right after them, the Congress now, which is set to wrap up having done even less than the last Congress, which did less than any Congress before. Woohoo! And as Congress has just stopped, the Obama White House has evolved to try to keep making things happen, even without that other branch of government in operation. They can't raise the minimum wage. President raised it, at least for federal contractors. They can't do anything on pollution and climate change. President will do what he can administratively, including negotiating deals with other countries, including China. They can't agree to do anything other than make campaign ads about ISIS. Well, the president will mount a military campaign without Congress that, frankly, pushes the limits of what a president is allowed to do with troops under the War Powers Act. They can't do anything other than make campaign ads about Ebola either. Well, the president will put in a request for funds, and who knows, maybe they'll act someday. But in the meantime, he'll get the Pentagon to send troops and logistical support moving around their existing contingencies and funding as long as that lasts. Do you like the way that this is going? Because there's more where this came from, particularly on immigration. I mean, he can't just keep going like this. Or would you prefer that some of the policy in our country be made with Congress, with this vestigial political organ that drags around behind us like a fishtail on a bird? Turns out the answer depends on whether or not you are a Republican. The Pew survey put out a huge, sprawling, fascinating new poll today on what Americans believe should happen next in our government. And there's a lot here, but the bottom line is this. Do you think Republican leaders in Washington should try as best they can to work with President Obama to accomplish things, even if it means disappointing some of the Republican base? Overall, to that question, the country says yes, yeah. You guys work together to do something. A clear majority of the country says yes, do something together. But when you ask just Republican voters the same question, look, the answer is no, 2-to-1 no. 2/3 of Republican voters say Republicans should not work with President Obama, even if it means that less gets done for the country. Republicans just say no. No. No, never, and on nothing. The country says yes, but Republican voters say no. So what do we get? Hold that thought.